D.C. there. All right, let's talk to American political analyst and commentator Mark Mason. Hi there, Mark. Not belittling, of course, the fact when you're 25, if you go to jail for 20 years, it's a heck of a long time. What do you make of this verdict today? We don't know what the sentence is yet. That's to come tomorrow. But what are your initial thoughts on what's come out in the last couple of minutes from Maryland there?
This is a landmark court decision. The judge essentially decided that journalism is not treason. This is really all about not only, of course, Bradley Manning, but the attack on journalism and WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. The U.S. government and the Obama administration, they really have bigger fish to fry. They're after Julian Assange. That's the one they want to catch. They're in a state of like catatonic terror about WikiLeaks. That's really their goal.
So let me just get this straight then. So even though Bradley Manning hasn't been found guilty of the most serious charge, it's no weight off the shoulders nonetheless of Julian Assange, you think?
I will not diminish the importance of the judge's decision today. A very important decision. Again, it's declaring that journalism is not treason. And yet on Friday, we had a federal appellate court order James Risen, the New York Times reporter, ordered him to reveal his sources in court. So the attack is on Friday. We had an attack from the appeals court, and we can expect that the Obama administration will follow up with the current attack on we have a massive attack on free speech and on freedom of the press. And they're going to go after Julian Assange. Again, though, this is a landmark decision.
Why did Manning choose to have his fate decided by a judge and not a jury of his peers, as you can do, apparently, in a military court? What was the logic there, do you think?
That would have been a discussion I'd like to have been privy to, a discussion between Bradley Manning and his attorneys. My suspicion is that with the military court system, the jurors, if he had chosen to use a jury trial system, the jurors would have been appointed by the commanding officer of the post, so they're not selected randomly as they are in civil trials. So I think that may have had a major factor in this.
Manning supporters say he made a personal sacrifice here. Depends which side of the fence you're on with this story very much, doesn't it? But, I mean, what's he gained by making that sacrifice?
Bradley Manning is a civil liberties hero. He will go down in history. People will be reading about him 200 years from now, about sacrifices of Bradley Manning, Edward Snowden, and other whistleblowers of this period, Daniel Ellsberg and others. He has sacrificed his future for defending the right of Americans to know about U.S. war crimes. This comes back to the larger context here that we have the wrong person in the court. George Bush should be sitting in a courtroom facing charges for war crimes. And this is a story that will be told hundreds of years from now about the courageous acts of Bradley Manning.
Mark, if you can hang on the line, if you could, for us for a second, we really appreciate your input live as you are here. I just want to bring in Afshin Rattansi, RT contributor as well. I gather he's on the line from London there. Hi, Afshin. Your immediate thoughts, or we've got Mark still with us, your immediate thoughts on the outcome of the last couple of minutes?
Well, echoing Mark, the wider context that he affected hundreds of millions of people's lives right around the world is, of course, that wider context. But the fact that this man, Bradley Manning, 3 years after he was arrested, was acquitted on an aiding the enemy charge is no cause for celebration. The man was tortured, and Hillary Clinton, the Secretary of State then, resigned. Her press secretary resigned over that torture. There is a British context to this as well, because, of course, his mother was British, and under British law, he becomes a British citizen because of, by virtue of his birth date. The British Foreign Office here in London has done very little, or perhaps nothing, to help Bradley Manning in those years of torture. And what this court has done is merely shown to those hundreds of millions of people around the world whether he catalyzed the Arab Spring, whether he exposed corruption of Latin American governments, of governments right across Southeast Asia. They'll all be saying, all the people will be saying, that is American justice. They won't hide.
Mark Mason just a couple of minutes ago saying, well, despite the fact that, yeah, he's been let off this, the biggest charge, if you like, it's no reason for Julian Assange to sleep any quieter or any better tonight. Do you agree?
Absolutely. It's a chilling verdict, especially because the threat to whistleblowers hasn't gone away. Today marks an anniversary, 1778, of the first whistleblower law in the United States. I understand a senator is trying to mark it as National Whistleblower Day. Well, whistleblowers around the world will not be looking to that verdict as a sign of justice. Julian Assange, of course, here in London for way more than a year, who published these exposés that catalyzed the freedom of so many hundreds of millions of people. He's on the run here in Ecuador, the Ecuadorian embassy in Knightsbridge, and of course Snowden is over there in Russia. This verdict means that Obama, quite apart from assassination strikes against people without any kind of due process, will seek to try as hard as he can to stop the people of America and the people of the world from understanding how foreign policy murders, in the case of the collateral murder video, and destroys the lives of so many people on Earth.
Afshin, stay with us if you would. Mark, what are the broader political implications for the US government from this case now, do you think?
The Obama administration is really on the run due to the courageous acts of Edward Snowden, Bradley Manning, and other whistleblowers. Information is actually getting out through the cracks, out to the people about the illegal activities, the illegal NSA spy programs, the illegal wars. So I think that we have a desperate administration that's trying to hold together the American empire, and that's Obama's job. He's just another guy. He's a temporary assistant holding down the job of maintaining the empire for 4 or 8 years. That's what presidents are. And so we really have a constitutional crisis. The United States is in a constitutional crisis right now. I can't list all the violations of the Constitution. The First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, certainly, are all being violated by all three branches of the government. A recent Pew public opinion poll was released just days ago. 70% of the American public believe that the American government is collecting information about Americans and using it for purposes that have nothing whatsoever to do with spying. Americans are not supposed to know that. They're supposed to be controlled through the mass media, the 5 mega corporations that control and manage public opinion here in the United States. So the control over public opinion is a linchpin of elite control in the United States. We're a representative government, and that government represents the interests of the bankers, the military contractors, big oil and big pharma and such. And this system of information control is beginning to crack. And this comes back again to Bradley Manning and WikiLeaks and the importance of Obama targeting both Manning and Julian Assange.
Mark, while you're on the line, I'm not expecting you to be a military legal expert here, but I've got a bit of confusion in my head myself now since this verdict's come out over the last couple of minutes. Our correspondent is saying the maximum that Bradley Manning could face in jail, 20 years. And yet we're hearing, he's been found guilty of he's been found not guilty of the most serious charge, aiding the enemy. Yet we understand that. That was punishable by life imprisonment. But Manning still faces over 100 years in prison on 19 counts. Is that true or is that false?
That's my understanding. Either 19 or 20 counts. Bradley Manning has already pre-trial pled guilty to certain charges, and those are already on the books, so to speak. He has pled guilty to 19 or 20 charges. My understanding is that Bradley Manning will be subjected to a minimum of 20 years in prison, even though as you mentioned and noted carefully, that the judge has just discarded the argument that he was committing treason.
Yeah, OK. Mark, thank you so much for your time for now. Back to you, Afshin. The sentence is due to come out over the next, maybe tomorrow, but maybe over a couple of days. A lot of people are still involved in that sentencing tomorrow. Can it go to appeal?
Yes, it can. My understanding is that the maximum for all those other charges, despite aiding the enemy, could go up to 154 years. Yes, the U.S. Army Court of Criminal Appeals. That would be after the sentencing procedure, where I understand that around 20 witnesses are to be called just for the sentencing procedure. Then it could go to this military court of appeals and theoretically then to the Supreme Court. But certainly the verdict isn't that has just been released isn't necessarily the final word by any chance, because also the sentencing could be appealed as well, as far as I understand.
What's our best guess with the best he'll come away with, do you think, as a sentence?
You know, I suppose the major thing to remember here, and it's good that people are identifying the constitutional law professor Obama with this case. We've been running a clip, haven't we, of President Obama caught off guard on a mobile camera. He himself complaining about President Obama, complaining about Bradley Manning and assuming his guilt. Obama wants to get him. Lots of people recently saying he wanted to close Guantanamo, not because of a case of justice. He thought that he didn't like the legal concerns where some members of the American political establishment could be tried for war crimes of different levels. And so Obama's put himself here. He's the one that said Manning is guilty. How that will affect an appeals court procedure, how that affects sentencing, one would hope that the lawyers will not only be making the case that he's British, which they so far haven't, in which case should Britain have a hand in this, and the lawyers should also be making the case that there is some distortion of judicial process, let alone the torture that Bradley Manning underwent, which is, of course, in violation of any kind of constitution. The First Amendment tonight certainly looks to be a lie, regardless of the acquittal on the aiding the enemy charge.
RT contributor Afshin Rattansi, also American political analyst and commentator Mark Mason. Thank you earlier on as well for your time. Much appreciated. OK, well, let me just sum up again what we've found out in the last 15 minutes or so. Bradley Manning has been found not guilty of the most serious charge in Maryland there of aiding the enemy. That was and would have been punishable by life imprisonment. Manning still, though, faces over 100 years in prison on 19 counts, including theft and espionage. His sentencing is set to begin Wednesday. We'll be bringing you the latest from the court, and the news continues here